Okay, this is from my book, Food, Mood, and IQ by Pete Rogers, and we're talking about, we're on chapter 3, and we're talking about how more and more papers and books have come out that sometimes mental illness and mood disorders are simply due to reactions to food or reactions to air pollution. And you want to figure that out because these patients often have repeated episodes of these problems, and they go to a psychologist, get referred to a psychiatrist, and they get put on drugs the rest of their life. And psychiatrists are not very good at working through the potential medical causes. So this lady, for example, Doris Rapp, she's like certified, board certified in pediatrics and in allergy and environmental medicine. She found lots of kids were having mental illness and behavior problems due to toxic exposures. And if you figure out the toxic exposure, you can just teach the kid, the family to avoid it, and they get cured, and they don't ever have to go on pills. So that's a valuable thing, and that's why I call this like an alternative universe to the typical psychology, psychiatry, stick the patient on drugs the rest of their life, turn them into a polypharmacy mental case. So she had an episode where she's on the Phil Donahue show and showed a bunch of kids there where they figured out what the kid was allergic to and the kids got better. This book right here, Toxic World, is a big, thick book where she goes through all the chemical exposures in different areas where what typically occurs. And so you would take like a little journal and keep track of everything you ate that day, paying attention to when you develop symptoms to figure out what it was, go on elimination diets. And lots of people figured out what the problem was and got better. So before you commit to lifelong stupid psychiatric drugs that don't work and cause a slow lobotomy, it's worthwhile to figure all this stuff out. A lot of cleaning chemicals are quite toxic. Nail polish is toxic, permanent glues, adhesives, paints, okay, dry cleaning chemicals. All right, and so she's pretty good about going through all that stuff. All right, the next book I'll talk about is Food and Behavior. This book is written by Barbara Stitt, and she was a probation officer in the 1960s. And she had had a bunch of problems herself where she had terrible rebound hypoglycemia. It was causing her to have mood swings, relationship problems, and even it got so bad she developed epilepsy from it. Then she finally found a doctor who understood nutrition, and she fixed her diet, and then all that stuff went away. She was cured. So she was a probation officer. She had the thought, well, gee, maybe this would help my probation or clients. So she started sending them to this doctor, getting them tested for heavy metals, and also having them change their diet to whole food. She did allow meat at that time, but she found dramatic improvements in her patients and also avoiding sweets, anything that give her rebound hypoglycemia. The average recidivism rate within, let's say, about in the ballpark of a couple of years, 3 years or so, was 70+%. With her patients, it was only 11%. So she became famous for having by far the best results of her probation clients not getting rearrested. She said almost all of them, almost every single one of them was a junk food junkie, and a large percentage of them were alcoholics also, and she detoxed them from alcohol. So she made great progress with these people. These are people who otherwise they would just say, put them on more drugs. There's no hope for these idiots. Okay. Her program also involved, of course, doing a drug screen for substance abuse, heavy metal screening for toxins, general blood labs, oral glucose tolerance test. Okay, and her patients also, as they ate less of these processed foods, their bad behavior improved. They avoided rebound hypoglycemia. They were less impulsive. Elimination diet also included getting them away from milk, soy, wheat, corn, coffee, beef, pork, oranges, and tomatoes. Okay, another book here that I'm going to briefly mention is something called Brain Allergies. And this book, by the way, I thought it was stupid. You'd say, well, why did I include it here? And the reason is, it's the same point. They document testing lots and lots of psychiatric patients for food allergies and food reactions and environmental pollution reactions. And when they were able to figure it out, as they often were, the patients got better. And environmental toxic exposures included fumes, air pollution, animal dander, some cosmetics, dye odors, some soaps. Okay, so the whole point of it is you could test for a lot of things in somebody who has a new schizophrenic break, a new depression, or some other mental illness, and a lot of times this will be the answer. Okay, this book here, Nutrient Power, I think I got a copy of it over here on my desk. I was meaning to do a book report on it. It's buried over here. I got so many books. Oh, here it is, Nutrient Power. Let me get this screen right. So here's the book, Nutrient Power, and this is the guy, William Walsh. It's William J. Walsh, And he claims that by doing a whole bunch of blood tests, they can quite often figure out what seems to be causing a person's mental illness. And he'll often recommend treating them with things like vitamin B6 and vitamin B12 and niacin. And my attitude about this is those are relatively mild drugs, and they're much less likely to cause a side effect. Psychiatric medicines are almost guaranteed to cause brain damage, leave the patient on them long enough. So it sounded reasonable to me, and it reminded me of the Voltaire quote, the doctor amuses the patient while nature cures them. Keeps them busy for a while. Okay, SSRI, a lot of them, they'll increase the suicide rate. They're bad. So I thought this was good. And he goes through methylation, undermethylation, overmethylation. He talks about all these biochemical pathways. And do I think he exaggerates? Of course I do. But it still sounded like a good thing. You've got potential to really help the patient, and you're much, 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 much less likely to hurt them. Okay, this next book was written by another guy whose last name is Walsh, but he's got different initials, William E., letter E. Walsh. And he also talks about, he's an allergist over at Mayo Clinic, and he talked about food allergies, food reactions. Common food allergies and reactions are to dairy, to eggs, to soy, to chocolate, to shellfish, to other fish, wheat, corn, citrus fruits, tomatoes, strawberries, peanuts, tree nuts, sesame. Okay, so those are all foods to avoid on the elimination diet. Things that you can eat, again, things like white rice, sweet potatoes, winter squash, green veggies. There's also something called food intolerance where you just can't digest it, like with lactose. Food sensitivity is limited ability to metabolize a food. Most important food sensitivity would be to glutamate, manufactured free glutamate or MSG. It's a neurotoxin. Side effects can be very bad, including I've known people with headaches, insomnia, asthma, AFib, and potentially much worse things like infertility. It often is associated with obesity, lowered sperm counts, so it's lowering your fertility. A lot of things. I'm sure that's just a coincidence in your water and your processed food, lower fertility. So anyways, the key point of this lecture was when somebody has a mental illness the first time, for example, don't just say, oh, well, it's a mental illness. Look for a cause, and you'll be surprised how often you'll find a cause due to food or some other environmental toxin, pollutant, and you could teach them how to avoid it and cure them for life and not have them go through the whole pharmacology routine.